everyone. ESBR Boxing. We are back. Myself and Paul Kelly. We are reunited for another weekly preview. Obviously, we know one of us has been absent for the last couple of weeks on these, but it's a delight, obviously, to be back with my co-colleague, my cohort, my friend Paul Kelly. Three fights, and before we ask Paul how he's doing, I'm just going to say we're in two destinations for three fights this week. We are obviously in what some would say is the mecca of boxing in Madison Square Garden, New York, but we are also in, I suppose, the British equivalent of a fine venue, which is Wembley Arena, for two fights there. I'm not going to say too much really, other than just to ask Paul firstly how he's doing, but secondly, he's going to introduce the first of those fights. He's going to introduce the fights taking place in the mecca of boxing. Paul Kelly, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks very much, Elliot. Good to be back, obviously. Both of us enjoyed a little break away on holiday and stuff. Recharged the batteries. Now we're back for another good couple of months of boxing week in, week out. So yeah, here we are. And as you said, we can start really nowhere else, I suppose. And at MSG in New York on June 10th. Yes, of course, the WBO super lightweight title is on the line here. Josh Taylor against Teofimo Lopez is the fight we are, of course, talking about. Absolutely huge fight. Quick tail of the tape. I know you're probably very familiar with both fighters, but just in case anyone doesn't know, Josh Taylor is undefeated. He's 19-0. He's a southpaw from Scotland, 5'10", has a 69.5-inch reach. And of his 19 wins, he's 13 stoppages. Lopez also has 13 stoppages from his 18 wins. He has that one defeat to George Kambosos Jr. He's only 25 years old, from the US, 2 inches smaller at 5'8". He is an orthodox fighter rather than Taylor being southpaw, and he's got a 1 inch reach disadvantage to Josh Taylor. You look at this fight, Elliot, and I'll ask you a couple of questions in a second, but just kind of to set the scene. Josh Taylor, obviously the former undisputed super lightweight champion. Did he really win that fight? Though we're not going to we've talked about this so many times before. Obviously, he beat Jack Catterall last time out, which is what, 15 months ago now. In a fight that the general consensus was that Josh Taylor had been well beaten by Jack Catterall and should have an L on his record, but he ended up getting the win. But apart from that, obviously he's beaten the likes of Winston Campos, O'Hara Davis, Victor Postol, Ivan Baranchik, Jose Maria Ramirez, Regis Prograis. So we're not taking away from some of those names he's beaten and well beaten. Superb record, Josh Taylor. Lopez obviously beat Lomachenko, then lost to Kambosos Jr. in the next fight, and then last time he fought Sandor Martin, but perhaps underperformed. My question to you, Elliot, is this is clearly a great fight and a compelling one. But first question is, do you see this as a 50-50? If you see it in someone's favor, whose favor do you see it in and why? And the second question is, both men underperformed in their last fight. My question is, who will have to make more improvement if they are to win this one?
Oh, superb question, superb question. And obviously, thank you very much, Paul, for that eloquent scene set there, contextualization there, as always. First question first. I think I agree with actually everything you're saying there. Obviously we've said before, Catterall beat Josh Taylor, but if you look at, I suppose, the overall body of work of Josh Taylor, that fight aside, you can't really criticize it. And if there's weight issues or there's out the ring issues or distractions, whatever there can be, or into that, I suppose that would be a factor here. I frankly have Josh Taylor significant favourite in this fight. I really do. I think Taylor have far too much for him if he turns up. If he's not completely drained and dead at the weight, basically, and turns up as he can turn up, I think he'll beat Lopez handsomely. I really do. Lopez obviously has done well, becoming obviously unified lightweight champion. But to be honest with you, I still think there's too many question marks over some of the performances that he's put in. Frankly, the Lomachenko one was bizarre from Lomachenko. The Sandor Martin one last time, like you said, he was down in that fight as well. I think Josh Taylor, frankly, if he turns up in any sort of condition, is favourite here for me. Making changes, I suppose it would just be, for me, it would just be obviously Taylor would have to make the changes around weight. I know obviously there was issues around whether he lost too much weight too quickly before Catterall, etc., whether he wasn't necessarily taking it seriously. So perhaps some sort of attitudinal shift and nutritional shift going to this one. But other than that, I think boxing wise, I can't see too many changes. I think the only changes he has to make. Lopez, I can't see him being able to make sufficient changes to deal with Josh Taylor. So for me, it's going to be a Taylor victory. To be perfectly honest, I think. Could I see a stop? Could I even see a stoppage potentially if Taylor really fancied? I could potentially see a stoppage like mid to late rounds. Yeah.
I agree with you, and I'm glad you said that. I'm not glad you said that actually, because I was going to say that next. That was going to be my point. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I would lean towards a Josh Taylor stoppage here. Um, talked about it before, but I think the problem with Teofimo Lopez is dad in the corner. Like he needs to have an actual real coach who can tell him when shit's hitting the fan what he needs to do. He needs to tell him the hard truth sometimes, which I don't think his dad's there to do. His dad just likes being in the limelight and having the fame, to be honest. Josh Taylor he underperformed against Catterall, but I think he underestimated him. And I don't think he'll do that again with any opponent going forward because he knows that he can lose. But yeah, we can't talk about that fight all day. Perhaps
Hmm.
we maybe will do, but you never know. We'll have a big fight breakdown for that particular fight as well, I'm sure. But yeah, Elliot, I believe you're going to take us through the second fight of our weekly preview, which sees more world title action this time on UK shores.
It does indeed, Paul. Thank you very much for that beautiful, wonderful segue introduction. We are, of course, talking about the IBF World Flyweight title fight that takes place at Wembley Arena. We've got Sonny Edwards in action against Andres Campos. Now, obviously, Sonny Edwards is a man whose profile is rising on Twitter and throughout the boxing sphere. But as we always do, we'll give a quick tale of the tape here and just say that obviously 27 years old, 5'3" with a 60-inch reach, undefeated, 19-0 record with 4 KOs. Had a decent performance, I suppose, last time out against the likes of Felix Alvarado in the defence that he had there. He had other victories on his record for names that you guys might recognise. Obviously, Thomas and Somba and Marcel Braithwaite. I think he's been kind of looking for a large, a kind of a big fight. Essentially, he's been shipping around. Obviously, that he's joining Matchroom, etc., hoping for that kind of challenge. But we go here with Andres Campos, who is 26, and Chilean, 5'3.5" with a 64.5-inch reach advantage. So he's got the reach and a slight height advantage. 15-0 record, also undefeated with 4 KOs. I think he's ranked seventh for the IBF. So not bad. And he's been in the ranking bodies for the other belts as well. He's dropped out of a few of those, but he's kind of top 10 fighter in that respect. Names that you might not necessarily. Well, obviously there's names on there like he's coming to this fight having beaten Gilberto Pedrosa. Last time out he fought Carlos Ruiz. That was in January. So he's got kind of 10-round experience. But not 12-round experience. But he's gone the distance 10 rounds several times. He's won the WBO Latino title. So he's used to kind of being in, I suppose, fights that are kind of beyond, I suppose, just kind of like your average run-of-the-mill sort of journeyman fighters. Sorry, but I think, Paul, the question I'm going to ask you here is: he's not a big puncher, this Campos, down the division. Obviously, Sonny Edwards is not a big puncher either. So I mean, you're the man on the betting show here. So I suppose if you had to put money on it, would you be looking for 12 rounds of boxing in this main event? But secondly, you and I have spoken previously, haven't we, around what we wanted to see with Sonny Edwards? We wanted the kind of Martinez fight. Do you think this is a credible challenge for Sonny Edwards, or are you still just thinking he's in this kind of holding pen and you're waiting for something bigger?
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. That was a brilliant breakdown. Yes, to answer your first question, this is going 36 minutes. I can only see it going one way, to be quite honest with you. Barring disaster, I think Sonny Edwards could arguably win every minute of every round. I've not known a huge lot about Campos. Yes, he's undefeated, but you look at his record and he hasn't fought anybody. Very padded, in my opinion. Answer your second question. I don't see this as much as a threat. It's his first fight with Matchroom, so I think it's win this, and then Eddie Hearn has obviously in the past promoted Jesse Bam Rodriguez and had Julio Cesar Martinez on his shows as well. So that was probably part of the thinking of Sonny Edwards joining Matchroom. They're the fights he needs to have. You've got, the Lakian's the WBA champion. That's a good fight. Julio Cesar Martinez, WBC, obviously. And then you've got Bam as the WBO. I think a couple of years ago, I would have said Sonny Edwards would have got knocked out by a couple of those guys. But see, now I think Sonny Edwards can beat all of those guys. So provided he gets through this unscathed at the weekend, it has to be unifications moving forward. And yeah, Edwards trying to become undisputed for me. They're the only fights that I want to see Sonny Edwards in going forward.
No, I totally agree with you. I think 36 minutes is where this is going, and it'll be Edwards UD. I expect to happen, and hopefully, obviously, Matchroom try and get some more fights out of him. I suppose, and just leaping him straight into a unification fight, then I'll kind of accept that. But again, like you're saying, we need to see him, don't we? We need to see someone of that talent in with some names that are going to push him, frankly. But Paul, again, like you said, we can't spend all our time talking in just one fight, but we are staying in Wembley, and we're going back to you, Paul, again for what is world title action in super bantamweight division. On a fight on the undercard of the Edwards card. So, Paul, please, we take us through that one.
You are indeed correct, my friend. The world title triple header here for our preview. This time in the women's super bantamweight division, as you correctly alluded to, the IBF title on the line here at 122 pounds. Ellie Scotney is fighting Chernika Johnson for the IBF title. Ellie Scotney, well known on British shores here. She's only 6-0, and only 25 years old. But yeah, she's been great, done what she's needed to do so far in her career, and has got this world title shot. She's 5'4.5" and an orthodox fighter. Janika Johnson, who is the champion, is 15-1 with 6 KOs. 28 years old from Australia. She's orthodox, and this is her second title defense, I believe. Could be her third. But yeah, you look at Trinica Johnson, and she's 15-1. That one defeat came to Shannon O'Connell back in March 2021. Since then, two good wins, become champion. 6 stoppages in 15 fights down at Super Bantam is actually, I think, a decent punching record, because we don't see a whole lot of punches given knockouts, given the fact that 2 minutes and all that. So I think she clearly has a bit of a dig, Johnson. But Ellie Scotney obviously won the European title last time out in just her sixth fight. For me, she's looked really impressive. She's had to do what she's had to do. I think she's brilliant. I think she's a quality operator and has the skill set to become world champion. Whether it's this fight or not, we'll come on to later. But yeah, I look at Johnson, and she's a credible opponent, incredible champion. Also young, it's only 28 years old. Not like she's over the hill or anything. She's never fought out of Australia. Whether you can read anything into that, I suppose you could say Ellie Scotney's never really fought out of the UK, so kind of works both ways. My question to you, Elliot, obviously both are young, as I alluded to, but Johnson's had 16 fights to Scotney's 6. Do you think experience could tell here, and Johnson is kind of in the favourite here, and you favour her? Or do you think that you like what you've seen from Ellie Scotney so far, and it's her night to become world champion?
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you again for that. I am look, I was impressed with Ellie Scotney last time out, to be perfectly honest with you. But it's just that it is like you're describing. If this was maybe upper division or wherever, like if this was like you say, the punching power obviously of Johnson, but also the sense of like the last. I think the last defense, she essentially pointed someone who had a 29-3 record as well. So you're coming like against fighters that are obviously really experienced. So for me, that is actually intrigue here. I'm not going to lie to you, perfectly, like anyone here. I'm not au fait necessarily with the actual with Tanika Johnson. Frankly, I've obviously seen more of Ellie Scotney, but I think I wouldn't actually be surprised if this was a step too far, having just looking at the record solely. Not a step too far as in she will never make it there. Just the sense of like you're your seventh pro fight essentially against someone who's established champion who's been in over twice the number of fights you have. Also with people that have been with a lot more experience. So that might be a factor. But equally, like you say, it's 10 2-minute rounds. So potentially she get done. But she's obviously Scotney's not got any KOs on her record. So you're looking at probably outpointing the opponent here. So who has got KOs. So to be honest with you, I'm undecided. I actually don't know. I really don't know, as I'm trying to say. I think it could really go either way for me. If I was betting, I'd have to look at the odds. I haven't looked at the odds yet, but British Shores makes it maybe a bit more of a leveler as well. But I honestly don't know. I'd probably lean slightly towards Johnson if it wasn't in the UK as well.
Yeah, very interesting. I think everything you mentioned there, kind of, I understand. Like, could this be a step too far? We don't know until we won't know until Saturday night. I mean, Scotney couldn't have done more up to now. Really, she's been brilliant, won that European title and everything. But as you say, sometimes, yeah, we're not going to sit here and say we're experts on Trinica Johnson and we've watched every single one of her fights, but not a household name or anything. But that doesn't mean that she's not a brilliant fighter. We've seen in the past, fighters that we haven't really, both in men's and women's divisions, fighters that we had no clue about, coming over and upsetting the apple cart and, going on to prove that they're one of the best in the division. So yeah, time will tell. But I think that, I look at the other champions in the division and, Rivas, Mercado and Lefebvre, and I think that there's a chance here that if Scotney can win this, she can unify and become undisputed in nearly in 10 fights. But yeah, time will tell, as you say. I just hope it's a good fight. But yeah, I think, Elliot, that this is a jam-packed weekend of world title action from the US, from the UK. And yeah, I'm looking forward to tuning in this weekend.
No, absolutely. And Paul, as you say, we try and keep this. We won't try and keep it to 15 rounds. Try and keep it to 15 minutes. But I just want to say, obviously, thank you guys for watching. Obviously, as we always say, let us know in the comments whether you think we're talking sense or otherwise. And also, we'll have coming up for this fight week, we'll have breakdowns, deep dives, interviews. We'll actually be at the Wembley event as well, so we'll give you some fight night content, set you up nicely for obviously what's happening in Madison Square Garden. Paul, lovely to see you again, my friend. Lovely. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. Is there any final comment you'd like to say, Paul, or are we able to let let the guys go back to what they're up to.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Appreciate it. And as always, yeah, let us know your feedback, whether we're talking shit or not. Cheers.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for watching.